If everyone could please take their seats. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in welcoming our webcast viewers. My name is Jillian Riley, and I'm the past president of the Canadian Club of Toronto. Viewers, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Our club offers members and guests a diversity of leaders and decision makers who address the issues of the day. We are also proud of the great sponsors who support these events. I want to express special thanks to today's event sponsors. BMO, represented by Tom Flynn, Carpenters District Council of Ontario, represented by Mike York, Scotiabank, represented by Katie Waugh, and TD, represented by Nori Campbell. Thank you for your generous support. I would also like to acknowledge the youth and young leaders table that we have today. They are the Monk School of Global Affairs, sponsored by RBC, and University of Toronto Political Science Department, sponsored by Bell Canada. If you could please stand and be recognized. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm sure it's going to be a great opportunity for you. And now our guest speaker. This morning we are pleased to welcome Canada's Finance Minister to deliver his fall economic statement. We are eager to learn the government's plan to strengthen our economy. The Honourable Bill Morneau has been a regular guest to our podium since he was appointed Finance Minister 3 years ago. Prior to his federal appointment, he was head of the leading employee benefits and pension services firm Morneau Chappell. Widely considered Canada's largest human resources company, Morneau Chappell serves thousands of Canadian businesses and millions of Canadians. He has also been actively engaged as a community leader. He has served as the St. Michael's Hospital Board Chair, Chair of Covenant House, and C.D. Howe Institute Board Chair. Among the boards that the federal minister has served on are the Lawrence Scholars Foundation and the Learning Partnership as well. In a moment, the minister will deliver his remarks. After the minister speaks, we are delighted the Canadian media icon Valerie Pringle will moderate this morning's Q&A session. She is a well-respected and popular journalist and broadcaster and also philanthropist. And now, Minister Morneau, the Canadian Club of Toronto's podium is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, first of all, thank you for that introduction. It's really an enormous pleasure to be here at the Canadian Club. Je voudrais remercier le Canadian Club pour le déjeuner aujourd'hui. C'est une chose importante d'avoir l'opportunité de parler avec les gens ici à Toronto, avec les gens qui travaillent dans le monde des affaires pour expliquer un peu notre programme pour améliorer notre économie pour le long terme. It's wonderful for me to be here, in particular among so many friends and people that I've worked with over the years, and to have the opportunity to give you an update on our nation's economy and a sense of what we're trying to achieve. It's particularly good this week because, as you heard, we released our fall economic statement on Wednesday, and it was a particularly important statement because we were able to give an update on the results of the last 3 years, the results of the policies we've put in place, and of course, a sense of how the global economy as well has positively impacted our country. I came here this morning, though, not to give you chapter and verse of the fall economic statement. If you really want to hear about what's on page 100 or 101, you can ask me during the question and answer. but rather to give you my sense of the context. As you know, as you just heard, I came from the private sector a few years ago, and people ask me on a very regular basis the differences of being in the business sector versus being in government. And obviously they ask me how it feels to get into the role of finance minister, a bit of an exciting and challenging role. And while there are many, many differences, I can tell you that there are a few things that are the same. And one thing that I guess I could identify as important in the context of what I'm going to talk about this morning is when I was in my business life, I found that if you focused on people, if you gave people the tools they needed to succeed, that more often than not, you found out that you were able to achieve great things together, that people would rise to the occasion. And I will tell you that it's in its simplest articulation, that's what we set out to achieve in 2015 when we got into office. We said that if we can deal with the anxieties of middle-class Canadians, if we can find a way to give people a greater sense of optimism about their future and the future of their children, that we will end up with great results. That was what I was very pleased to report on this week. For context, though, it's important to see what we've done over the last few years that's led to the position that we're in right now. You'll remember that early in our mandate, we lowered taxes on middle-class Canadians. We took that middle band of taxation from $45,000 to $90,000, and we lowered the rate there from 22% to 20.5%, a 7% decrease. So it meant that everybody up to $200,000 in annual income had a lower taxation rate. We also then put in place the Canada Child Benefit, significantly increasing the amount of money going to families as they raise their children. So those two measures alone end up for a family, a typical family of four in 2019, will end up with $2,000 more after tax than they had in 2015, giving them more optimism about their family and their opportunities. We knew that was critically important to start with. We then said we need to think about how we ensure that we engage all Canadians in our success. So we looked at housing. We realized that a significant number of Canadians were underhoused. We put in place the National Housing Strategy, a $40 billion plan intended to raise more than 500,000 Canadians out of core housing need. We then said we have a challenge that not everybody has the opportunity for success in our country. Recognizing that we have a huge demographic challenge, we need to make sure that everyone's engaged. And of course, sometimes the economically right thing to do and the morally right thing to do collide in a very opportune way. So we put in place, as I said, the Canada Child Benefit. We increased the amount of the Guaranteed Income Supplement for single seniors. And we put in place the Canada Workers Benefit, a benefit that enables people to go from not working into work so that they can get into the workforce. And with those three measures alone, we took about 650,000 Canadians out of poverty. So I want you to think about that. That's 650,000 Canadians out of 37 million people. A very significant difference in terms of providing opportunities for those people and for our overall economy. We realized that we needed to create advantage for the long term, so we put $180 billion into infrastructure for the next 10 years. And that's taken some time to get into the economy. We arranged agreements with the provinces, but now we have about 30,000 infrastructure projects going on across the country, generating the sort of economic activity that brings, but also increasing our opportunities for the long term with a more efficient economy. On top of that, obviously, we needed to make sure that people were investing for success. So after a discussion that you might remember I was involved with, we lowered small business taxes. We now, as of January 2019, will have small business tax rates in our country of 12.2%, far and away the lowest among a group of 7 countries. allowing businesses that want to invest on a very advantaged basis. So those were some of the things we put in place. So where are we 3 years later? Well, the news in our economic statement was very good. We are at a level where we are growing rapidly. In 2017, we were the fastest growing economy among Group of 7 countries. This year and next year, we expect to, together with the United States, continue to lead the pack. From an employment standpoint, which you'll recognize as a government is fundamental to what we're trying to achieve, we've had enormous success. We have the lowest unemployment rate that we've had since 1976. That's particularly important when you think we came into office with a 7.1% unemployment rate, and now we're at that historically low 5.8% unemployment rate. That, as well, of course, is leading us to a positive situation with wage growth. And of course, since we're trying to make sure that people are seeing the benefits of our growth, that's critically important. This year, if the results continue as they have so far this year, in November and December, we will see the fastest wage growth that we've seen in a decade. So Canadians are doing better. And of course, our economy is doing better. The question always, though, is, well, how are we set for the long term? We have the good fortune as a country of being the envy of the world in terms of our balance sheet. We have the lowest amount of debt as a function of our economy among the Group of 7 countries, but not the lowest by a little. We are less than half of the average amount of debt among Group of 7 countries. So that is a very positive situation for us to be in, to be resilient in the face of whatever challenges we might face because of that fundamental situation that we find ourselves in. You'll remember that it wasn't that long ago that Prime Minister Chrétien and subsequent to him, Prime Minister Martin, had to deal with a very real challenge in terms of the amount of our debt as a function of our economy. So they did some things that made it very positive for those of us that have followed to make sure that we maintain that advantage, but recognize that affords us the opportunity to think about how we can continue to grow our economy. And our message is that we want to maintain that advantage. We want to do what we're trying to achieve, but do it in a way that allows us to lower our debt as a function of our economy, lower our deficit as a function of our economy in a balanced and appropriate way. That's where we find ourselves today, and frankly, in the economic statement on Wednesday, that's what matters most to most Canadians. But we also had to think about how we maintain our success over the long term. So many of you will know that over the last 6 months, I've been out talking to business leaders, people who make investments in our economy, asking them what we need to do to make sure that we can continue to be competitive over the long term. We didn't, of course, predict when we put our electoral campaign together in 2015 that there would be a new and different occupant of the White House in the United States. Of course, that changed a lot of things in our world. It made business leaders more concerned around the nature of our trading relationship with the United States. That's what I heard. More concerned broadly with our trading relationship around the world. I also heard that we need to worry about how we ensure that businesses can invest with a regulatory burden that's appropriate to protect the health and safety of Canadians, but also ensuring that businesses can invest with the right amount of regulation. And I heard, of course, a concern that we need to be able to invest on a competitive basis with the United States. The business leaders I spoke to were, almost all of them, very focused on how they can continue to invest in our country. Patriots, yes, but also focused on how they can continue to be successful in a country where we're now seeing record corporate profits. So we set out this week to address those issues. We looked at the trade issue and we realized that, yes, we've made huge progress in getting to a new NAFTA. That was important. But there's still a sense that we need to do more in trade. So we laid out a marker. We said that we want to increase our trade outside of the United States by 50% between here and 2025, setting out a goal. We've been very successful at doing trade deals in this country. 2/3 of the global economy we have trade deals with. but we've been less successful in ensuring that we actually trade with those people after we get the trade deals. So we've said that we need to do something about that. We're putting more resources into trade commissioner services, more resources to help small and medium-sized businesses to actually trade in other parts of the world. On a regulatory basis, I'll tell you that a big amount of the concern obviously came from the oil and gas sector. The oil and gas sector right now is facing enormous challenge, very challenging differential in terms of the price that we get for the resources that we send to other parts of the world. So we know that we've done the most important thing we can do by moving forward on the Trans Mountain Pipeline and the expansion. We recognize that our resources, our clean resources in a country where we're putting a price on pollution, can make a difference in other parts of the world where, to be frank, some of them are still spending a lot of their energy dollars on energy sourced from coal. But we can't do that unless we get our resources to international markets. So we took that important step while we're also trying to make sure that we have an environmentally responsible approach at home. We know that the industry and the Alberta government continue to talk together, and that's something that we're going to continue to listen to, because it is an important challenge not only for Alberta, but for our entire country. I did hear other things about regulation, though, and we set forth in our economic statement an agenda to deal with regulatory issues that we heard from business people. If you take the time to go through it on a page-by-page basis, Kareem Bardisi told me he read it page by page, which means he has a very boring life. But if you do that, you'd see that we've listed a whole number of things that we're going to get at right away. But we've also talked about a process by which we can ensure that our regulatory environment protects Canadians, but also considers the economy and how we need to make sure that businesses can operate on an appropriate basis. And finally, last but not least, we looked at how we can ensure businesses can invest. We said that we don't need to worry, we don't think about the tax rate because we are now competitive. The United States, after all, moved themselves into a competitive position with other countries that had moved before them. But what we do need to make sure is that the next investment is an investment that people want to make here in Canada. So we decided to allow people to depreciate, to accelerate the depreciation on their investments in a way that allows them to invest rapidly in our country so that they can create jobs here and ensure that we have exciting opportunities in our country. The outcome of what we did means that on a basis of the next investment, an investor in Canada or an international investor coming to Canada will have a 5 percentage point advantage versus an investor looking to make that investment in the United States. And we think that's a very important measure to make sure that we remain competitive over the long term, reminding people that those investments not only help us next year and the year after, but those jobs come for the long term. And the good news is the economy is going well. So we were able to do that. We were also able to do some other things that we think are important. Ensure we have nutritious food in the north. Make sure that we have the ability to have social innovation with the Social Finance Fund. Deal with a journalism sector that's in a hugely challenging situation by recognizing that we need an independent free press to have a strong democracy. So we've taken some actions that we know are critically important for the long term of our country, and we hope that you'll agree that this is the right way to move forward when we have an economy that's so robust. So it's great to be here this morning. I'm looking forward to your softball questions and hoping that we can continue this dialogue so as we move forward with our Budget 2019 and our electoral platform, that we'll be able to incorporate your ideas and your thoughts in what we do to make our country a better country. Thank you.
Monsieur.
Madame, you're an icon.
Apparently I'm popular. That's just what Jillian says. She's my PR agent. Good morning, tout le monde. How are you? Last time we spoke was just before the summer. We were talking, that was just before the pipeline deal was done. But a lot of people in the audience, because it was the Toronto Board of Trade, were talking about this competitiveness gap. And I'm wondering, The thought process, you explained some of that, lots of conversations of what went into some of the things you decided that were in this statement. And also, if you feel you've addressed that, like.
Well, the thought process, I identified a few conversations that you've heard. It was pretty clear to us that the volatility of our world, the challenges facing businesses, are creating the same kind of anxiety among business leaders that, frankly, we're seeing among average Canadians. Things are moving quickly. Those changes make it difficult to invest because when things are changing rapidly, you don't know where you're going to be the year after and the year after that, so it's hard to judge those factors. Of course, when you have a disruptive force in our neighbor to the south, you can't always judge exactly where that will be, and that's a critically important factor for our economy. So that was the thinking behind making sure that we have a regulatory environment that works, making sure that we consider not only how to create stability with our U.S. as a trading partner, but also focus on how we can diversify internationally, and ensuring that, again, that next investment. But in answer to the second part of your question, no, the job's not done. I think what we should accept as the normal in our lives, and I know that there's a lot of people who think about that in this room, is that change is a constant, that we will be having to react to a new world tomorrow and the day after, and as a government, we need to be agile in thinking about what we do, and in particular, we need to ensure that we do things in a balanced way. We have the really excellent fortune of having a strong position from which to take decisions, and that's what we're focused on right now.
You mentioned Alberta. You're going to Calgary. The Prime Minister was there yesterday, and it's very tough. I mean, as I said, we were talking pipeline last time, when we were in conversation, but still, product is not getting to market, and it's a crisis. And the question keeps being asked: is it Alberta's problem or is it Canada's problem? And what the hell? Because it really is a crisis.
Well, we think it's Canada's problem. It's obviously most acute in Alberta. I just need to reiterate how big a decision it was for your government to decide to buy for $4.5 billion the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We saw that as the most cost-effective and safest way for us to get our resources to market. And the Trans Mountain Pipeline, as a pipeline, of course, is the one that has the least impact on people along the route, since it's actually twinning a pipeline beside a pipeline that's already existed since 1953. So that was an important decision that we saw as necessary and consistent with our overall goals of ensuring that we have an appropriate approach to climate change. I think the challenge now is this issue is acute. For people who don't spend a lot of time on this market, there's a number of factors going on. There were a number of refineries in the United States that were reducing capacity for oil to be refined, so you can't send oil from a pipeline if there's nothing to do with it when it gets to the other end. Those refineries will hopefully come back online. There was a Line 3 pipeline that was expected to move forward more rapidly that is behind schedule. So there's a number of factors that are causing some acute challenge.
The government is calling for help with trains, right? At this
They are
point?
calling for help with trains. I mean, I guess one of the issues that we all need to think about is, are trains the most effective way to move that resource around the country? But it's something that's certainly under consideration, we know. So if there's a consensus among the industry, if people come to us with a consensus view on things that make sense, it's incumbent on us to listen. This is a very important issue, and we're going to continue to do that.
There are quite a number of questions here that are very concerned about how you're sleeping at night, essentially. About that deficit.
So that's my wife, who's here.
And not just Nancy, but essentially, with the economy as strong as it is, here's one of the questions. If not now, when does deficit reduction become a priority. The numbers are big, and they're problems, and you can't just spend your way out of all of them, right?
So this, of course, as all of you read your newspapers, or if you read newspapers, I hope they do.
No, well, that's another question.
That's another question.
We're getting to that one.
But
those are the not-for-profits.
You are going to see that debate for sure. I mean, there's going to be a really live debate. We think that dealing with the competitive environment now, with the opportunity that we have, is really important. It's really important for the long term. If we don't have the business sector making investments, then we have an enormous challenge. We also think this debate is largely one about speed. So what we've said is we're going to allow those investments, which will create jobs, and we're going to reduce our deficit and our debt as a function of our economy over time. The alternative idea is, no, don't allow as much of those investment advantages right now and reduce the deficit more rapidly. Well, if we do the second alternative, when you take $18 billion out of the economy rapidly, even though it's a $2.2 trillion economy, you should expect that there will be impacts. You should expect that spending will be reduced on people. And we came in saying we want to make sure middle-class Canadians feel more optimistic. That's not consistent with what we're trying to achieve big picture. You should expect that unemployment might go up. You should expect that growth might be slower. So it's important to be careful of what you ask for. We think that reducing our deficit and our debt in a gradual and measured way is appropriate. And I want to remind everyone who's concerned about this, and yes, I do sleep at night because we have a very strong balance sheet. I was with a group of CEOs last week, and I looked at one of them on this comment, and I said, so imagine for a minute that you were in your sector. I won't tell you who it was. In your sector, you were the organization that had the lowest level of debt in your industry. You're in the best financial situation, but your analysts keep coming to you and telling you you need to focus on the debt. Well, you'd look at them like they were nuts. You'd say, well, wait a second, I'm the most competitive among all the other companies, and I should be focusing on growing my revenue or making my business more resilient or ensuring the long term. The point is you need to do both, and we do need to do both, and we cannot ever not be fiscally responsible. But we need to consider the context in which we're living. And the context in which we're living is we have a strong balance sheet. We have an obligation to recognize that the anxiety that I identified about business people is broad-based anxiety among Canadians. And we need to find a way to ensure that people are feeling confident about their future if we want to have a confident future. Simple as that.
Here's a question that just came. Are you committing to bringing universal pharmacare in?
We as you know, we identified the challenge that Canadians face in getting pharmaceutical products as a really important one. It's probably for most people in this room, you have access to an employee benefit plan that provides pharmacare products for you. But it's important to recognize that that's not the case universally in our country, that there are a significant number of people that either don't have coverage or who are under-covered for pharmaceutical products. Obviously, pharmaceutical products are a critically important part of the healthcare system. So we have an advisory committee working on this issue, led by Eric Hoskins, a former health minister of Ontario. They're due to report back to us. And I will tell you quite honestly, I have actually not seen the outcome of their thinking, but we will be looking at how we can deal with this issue so that we have a system that works for all Canadians. That's what I think we would expect in a country that has universal health care.
Tell me about we were talking about news media. Here, have a sip of water, please. We've got probably just about 5 more minutes or so. Some people would say our media companies and journalist outlets are not-for-profits already. You'll be giving some of them status. Was it a mistake, do you think, not to have named that independent panel? Because now, it's rampant, it's going to be favoritism, it's going to be skewed. Would it have been tidier had it been done and named?
So for those of you who aren't paying attention to this raging issue in one sector of our economy,
a critical sector, yes, nonetheless.
The folks on the other side of the house from me are saying that when we say that we want to support a free press because it's important for a healthy democracy, they're arguing that by doing that we are somehow buying off the press. My first comment is, if we were trying to do that, I don't think we're going to be successful, because I've actually not found the press so terribly easy to deal with personally over the last couple of years. So I'm not sure I buy the argument. But your question's a reasonable one. You know, why not, to ensure independence, which we absolutely want to do, why not name the people and figure out the approach before you announce a policy? Well, the problem with policy is sometimes you can't do it all by yourself. And you need the outside people to advise you on how you best do that. So our observation is that we can't come up with an independent process without the media sector being engaged in that, because they're going to be the ones to help us select how we ensure that the right organizations that are providing information to Canadians in a way that's appropriate to the broad range of voices, they need to be engaged. We couldn't tell them about what we were going to do before we announce it, because that's not the way it works. We don't tell people about tax proposals until we announce them. So we had this catch-22 that it would have been nice, but we have to announce it first. Then we have to get people like Ed to help us, and others, I hope, in the industry that will say, this is the way that you make it independent, so that people will have confidence that any decisions around the media sector are independent from government, not just our government, but future governments. And, you know, the question, I would love to know in every room I go into, how many people think that an independent and strong free press is important for a strong democracy.
Okay, we'll do, I think I've probably got time for about 2 more questions. You referred to trade and a much more aggressive kind of action to try and implement things. One question here about Brexit's impact on the Canadian economy, potentially. Are you worried about that? USMC, you know, all just these deals and what they're going to do to this country.
Taking the last part first, obviously the agreement around a new NAFTA is a positive from a standpoint.
You don't use that USMCA.
You know, it's just too high. You know, it's really hard to. So that's positive from a stability and a confidence standpoint. There's, you know, in every negotiation, there's things that happen in the negotiation, but I think what you will have seen in that negotiation, when we started the negotiation, we said it was going to be about cows and cars, and it was about cows and cars. It was about the dairy sector in Canada and the automobile sector in Mexico, and I think we ended up in a place where we're going to be able to continue to trade in a very effective basis. That's positive. With respect to Brexit, this is an enormous challenge for the UK economy. We expect that we will have a continuing ability to trade with the UK. The basis under which we've developed the Canada-Europe trade agreement is the continuing basis until they actually go through Brexit. And after that, I'm sure, based on our discussions, that Britain would rapidly want to have an agreement with us, which would be, I suspect, as good or even potentially more advantageous than the Canada-Europe trade deal. So will their economy have some bumps along the way? They already are experiencing bumps with lower growth, and that's impacting them to a great part, and it has an impact on the global economy, but not a material impact on the Canadian economy.
So are you running again?
I am, yeah. So
right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this will be, I mean, campaign, and you've probably started it with this year going, obviously different. I mean, last time I remember, Prime Minister was talking no negativity, sunny ways, optimism for Canadians. Will that fly this time around, or you're running on a record of what you've done, and how will you do that?
Well, we would like to be positive. We think that that's what Canadians want to see. But I expect that there will be some divides. There will be potentially some parts of the political spectrum that question the advantage of diversity to our country. And I think there might be some that question the advantages around immigration in our country. That won't be us. We will be very focused on why we think that diversity has worked in Canada and why we think that immigration is an important factor in our future. And that, to the extent that someone else questions those values, we will draw clear distinctions between our point of view and theirs, and that might mean there's some friction. And that's okay. In a democracy, we're supposed to have robust debate. We'd like it to be friendly and optimistic. But when it's not, we'll stand up for what we think is the right vision for our country.
Well, I think probably everyone's got a TikTok to work because you're all very important people. I feel honored to be among you.
So thank you very much,
sir.
everyone, for being here this morning. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie.
Minister Morneau and Valerie, thank you so much for being part of our venue this morning. We appreciated the details, Minister Morneau, you provided on how the government's economic policies are benefiting everyone. And I was very pleased to hear some of the stats that you mentioned. Lowest unemployment rate since 1976, fastest wage growth in a decade, and I think these are very positive signs and very important aspects of our economy, especially in times of ongoing fluctuation and volatility. Je voudrais vous remercier d'avoir donné des détails sur votre planification pour améliorer notre économie. We wish you continued success in your portfolio and all the best for the upcoming campaign. And to you, Valerie, we are deeply appreciative of your participation in moderating the Q&A this morning. Before we conclude, let me tell you about some upcoming events that we hope you will attend. On Thursday, December 13th, we will feature Ed Clark, chair of Toronto's own Vector Institute, speaking about the AI ecosystem in Canada. And in the new year, we will host the GTA's Best Political and Economic Forecast Lunch on January the 8th, and we really hope you can attend. We'd like to once again acknowledge our sponsors for today's event, BMO, Carpenters District Council of Ontario, Scotiabank, and TD. We'd also like to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC live streaming for today's event. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. We hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend.